Hello, interwebs. So I'm doing something a little bit different, and I'm actually going to be doing a video from my car. The reason being is I just got out of seeing The Joker with some friends, and I'm not going to be going home for a bit, and I just have so many thoughts that I have an argument with my friends about this. One that I thought was interesting, but I think we fundamentally disagreed on stuff, and I kind of wanted to put it out there while I'm still processing it. Because I think I have a lot of thoughts going into this, coming out of this film that I really kind of want to just talk about briefly before I keep driving, because I'm not going home right away, and I don't want to let this sit for too long, and I kind of just want to get it out of my brain so I can kind of release it, and by my feeling on this movie. When I finished the film and I sat there, my initial impressions were, I don't know how I feel about this movie. It felt gross, and I felt gross having just sat through it. But I didn't know if that was the intention, if that the movie wanted me to feeling gross, or I was just feeling gross because of the movie's unintentionally. Unintentionally, the movie made me feel gross because of the things it was trying to say, or the movie was intending me to feel gross, if that makes any sense. And it kind of got me into this conversation with my friends, talking about the movie and how I felt that I think the more I think about it, the more I like it, and then the more I hate it at the same time. Because, and I'm going to do full spoilers so I can talk about this movie. So if you haven't seen it yet, or don't want to be spoiled in any way, please go see it and check it out. And I'd love to have you come back afterwards. And I also should say that that this is going to get a little bit political to a degree. And I think that's because the film itself is trying to be political. So, I'm trying to figure out where to start here. I think Joker is a film that has really strong aspirations to say something big and important. And I think what it is trying to say, and I think Joker literally says it at the end of the film when he's talking to Murray on TV, he says, this isn't about politics, or it is about politics, but not one side or the other. I'm not representing this side or that side. I'm just saying that this discourse going on right now affects me in a way that is detrimental to my life, and everyone's just yelling and screaming at each other, and it hurts me as a person, and it's led me to be just to go mad. And you know, he incites violence and, you know, kills Murray and all that stuff. And so I think that's what the film is trying to say, is that the discourse around politics right now, regardless of which side you're on, hurts the person in the middle, either way. And that is a message that I can very much get behind, to a very strong degree. I do, and that's if you watch anything on my channel, I think that's pretty much what I try to say on this channel quite a bit, is that, you know, both sides are screaming at each other, and there's no room for people to live in the middle. It has to be one way or the other. And being in the middle, you just can't be anymore, or else you go insane. But the problem that I'm having with The Joker, I think, just having watched it once, having my initial impressions, is that I think it tries to play the themes that it's having very broadly. It's trying to be apolitical in the sense that here's this theme that you could read as a left or a right wing thing. Here's a thing you could read as another left or right wing thing. And so it tries to play it sort of this down the middle apolitical approach. But by doing so, it touches on a lot of different themes and ideas that are very political right now in our discourse. And I think that the film just shies away from trying to say anything about it, even though it's very clearly evoking those things and wants to evoke them intentionally, but then pulls back from having any stance on it, because it's I'm apolitical. I don't want to talk about that. So, for example, there is a moment in the film, again, full spoilers, where Joker learns that his mother was abused and he was abused by this same person. We don't ever learn who that person is. Could be Thomas Wayne, possibly, but it could also just be some other random guy. So they're both abused. And in that scene, we see like little clippings in like the paper that says like a mother allows her son to be abused. And Arthur, the Joker, is like watching a scene of his mother like admitting this, and then immediately the scene after that, he goes to the hospital where his mother is and he murders her. Now, clearly we are supposed to feel shock and terrible at the fact that he's murdering his mother. It's not a good thing that he's murdering his mother. But it comes off the scene where it is not entirely clear what the film is trying to say about how the mother treated him. Because, and this is me trying to assume the best intentions, my assumption is that the writers were trying to be like, you know, he was abused and, you know, that was a bad thing and it's going to lead him to kind of do this thing. But because it doesn't make clear the fact that, like, the mother was also abused and that, let me try and rephrase. When women get abused and they have children and the child gets abused too, there is a narrative in this country that says it is the woman's fault for not stopping their kid from being abused, that they should have done more. And even the woman themselves, the abused person, can feel that way, that they should have done more to protect their child. But, and we could have this is a whole other conversation, but I am of the mind that it is the abuser's fault, totally and completely. And as much as like the mother, you know, would have loved to have done more, it's not her fault for not being able to. As much as that sucks. It's a shitty situation all around. But it is not her fault. But the film doesn't make that message clear. And the fact that there is a message out there that says it is a woman's fault for not protecting her child. And then the film kind of just brushes past that and even shows a clipping that says, oh, it's the mother's fault. And then we immediately go to him killing his mother. I'm left in that scene where he's killing his mother being like, you know, I know we're supposed to feel bad that he's killing her, but are we also not to be a little bit angry at her for that she didn't stop the abuse? And I don't think that that is the intention of the movie. But I don't think it makes that clear. And I know some people are going to be like, well, the movie shouldn't have to make that clear. You don't need to, you know, SJW virtue signal everything. It can be left open to interpretation. And I do get that. But I don't know. It just playing it so broad that I think it could be interpreted that way. And this is the crux of the thing that I think that my friends and I were having a conversation about, is that this film can be interpreted in a way that is not good. Let me just put it in that sort of mild terms. And I don't think that's the intention of the writer. And I do not think, and I did a whole video about this, I don't think you could put, you know, a misinterpretation of an author's film completely on the author. But I do think that if the film wanted to say these things and touch upon these topics, there is an element of like, you should say something about that in a way, and not just like use it as a sort of backdropping for your narrative. And to give another example, there's like a woman of color in this film who, like, Arthur imagines as like his friend, and then he follows her. You know, there's a real life woman, she doesn't really know him, but he imagines throughout the film that, you know, he's friends with her. And then at the end of the film, he sneaks into her apartment and, you know, he's just sitting there, and then she's terrified, and then it's implied that he kills her. And again, there's this narrative of like, again, I know this is going to get pushed back on my channel, and it's like, there is a narrative of like, you know, white people going into people of color's houses and hurting them and harming them. I mean, there was something that, you know, happened not too long ago, a story of a white woman breaking into a man of color's house and, you know, shooting him because she thought it was her house. And like, I was clearly thinking of that when I was watching that scene. And that, to be fair, that's not completely the film's fault. That happened. The film was written and shot well before that actually happened. But you know, that narrative wasn't non-existent when the film was written. So I don't want to place it all in the film. But again, it's just these touching these themes, and like there's a kill the rich theme in this movie about like socialist themes in there too. And again, socialism is a big piece of conversation today. Not that I'm saying socialists want to kill the rich, but it is a sort of anti-rich, anti-1% narrative. And it just sort of uses all these things as like a backdropping to have this sort of like, it's not about politics, but politics hurts the little guy conversation. And I don't know if I feel okay with a film, especially a film with such a platform as this big comic book movie, just not saying anything but evoking those storylines and those themes and not to do anything with them. It feels irresponsible. And I guess like this is the crux that I was having with my friends, and kind of as I alluded to before, is my friends are saying is like, you can't place an interpretation of the art on the artists themselves. And I wholly agree that like in and of itself, in an individual world separated from context, just if this film, like if someone watches Joker and then goes out and does something horrific, like, does something awful, like a lot of people are talking it might happen, which I think is overblown anyways. But even if that does happen, I don't think it's the fault of the filmmakers, nor it is the film's fault. The person who was going to commit the violence was going to commit the violence anyways. And this is just, even if it's the straw that breaks the camel's back, there was going to be a straw, whether it was this film or not. So I don't blame the film for that. What I think is a bigger issue is that this film is placing itself into a conversation today, intentionally placing itself into that conversation. It wants to be placed in that conversation. It's not just saying, oh, I'm a comic book movie. It's saying, I have high prestige political aspirations. I have a message that I want to say. That was what this film is trying to do. But then, so it's placing itself in that conversation, but then saying, like, I have no responsibility for the topics that I bring up. That's what bothers me. And I guess to use an example that might be a little bit clearer, because this film is a little bit muddy. It kind of touches on a lot of stuff, but I'll use an example to be clear. There has been a narrative in film of how trans people have been treated throughout many years. Like, let's, forget the past 10 years, like, look, like 20, 30 years ago. Film is like Ace Ventura making fun of trans people. You've got, I'm trying to think of like, just using like gender and trans people as sort of like a joke in film. I could not go to each one of those films and individually say like, this is the one that caused all these problems for trans people. It would be irresponsible of me to put that on one filmmaker or one creator or anybody. It was a discourse that was created in the United States and around the world about trans people. And these films are just joining in that conversation. But all of those films taken as a blanket created the narrative that led to trans people being seen as jokes or less than or nefarious or evil or tricksters, like trans women trying to trick men into having sex with them or something like that. So no one individual film caused that thought, but all of them together did. And so, if someone came to me today, especially with how politicized trans rights are today, if someone came to me and wrote a film that featured a narrative with a trans character in it that was featured that way, and even you could even justify it to me within the narrative of the film. If you could sit and like be like, there's a reason that I want this character to be trans, and there's a reason that I want them to be the villain or viewed this way or framed this way, and it's 100% kosher. Like, it's 100% makes sense. 100% fits into the story that you're trying to tell, and I don't have an ideological problem with it in and of the story of itself. I would still say, is it right for you to release this movie right now? Is it right for you to release a movie that would frame trans people in a way that is negative? In a world right now where, trans rights are so politicized and trans people are being so harmed directly by, administrations and laws and things like that. I would say you probably shouldn't. Maybe 10 years from now, maybe when trans rights are all great and good and, everyone's saying kumbaya and everything's happy, maybe it'd be a great time to release that film. But right now, I feel like releasing that film right now and putting it into this conversation and discourse that we have right now is not appropriate. It just adds to this pile of things that does harm. And, if someone does something bad to trans people, after that, I'm not going to point to the film and say it's this film's fault. That would be ridiculous of me. Even if they said this is this film, like I'm using this film to justify my hatred, I wouldn't place it on the filmmaker themselves. That would be ridiculous. But you are placing it in a conversation that has larger implications. And I think that that's what Joker's doing here. Is like, there is a discourse in this country right now that is tough and hard and has very real consequences. And for this film to place itself into that, intentionally place itself into that, like it wants to be placed in a political, high aspiration discussion. Like Joker literally says that at the end of the film. And so to do that and then not address the things that you bring up in any salient way that, to like try and like wash your hands of it and just say, look at these things that exist in the world. Isn't it really big and a lot of stuff going on and it causes harm to this little guy? But then like have that little guy be complicit in some of that stuff, but then kind of wash your hands of like discussing that side of it feels weird to me. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is like, this is bigger than this film. And honestly, this part of me that's like, this conversation that I'm having, this thought process that I'm having right now is actually a good thing. I actually think that the fact that this film actually is bringing up this conversation in a bigger discourse is actually a good thing. And even having talked this out, and like I said, I just saw the film, maybe that is a good thing. Maybe it is a good thing that this film did that. Whether it was the intention or not, maybe this higher discourse that this film is starting, it will be beneficial. But I worry that it might not be, that I worry that it might just further push people on either side, and people will say, Joker's good, Joker's bad, and I think that's kind of already happened. People's like, shut up, Joker's a movie, whatever, and other people's like, Joker's bad and horrible, and we should never watch it, don't support it. And so I feel like the conversation is just gonna not be productive. But again, that's not something I can put on the film. And so I'm left sitting here in my car having all these thoughts rolling in my head because I don't think I can definitively, there's no place I can come down on the Joker. I don't think the Joker is inherently just ideologically, I do not think the Joker is a bad film, nor do I think ideologically the Joker is a great film. Just on an ideological messaging stance. In terms of craft, in terms of like the filmmaking going on, like Joaquin Phoenix, excellent acting. Directing, I think it was, in terms of the character, excellent. The cinematography, excellent. There's so much great. I think this is one of the best comic book films ever done in terms of craft. The writing is the one part where I'm just sort of like, I think it plays itself too broad in a time where being too broad is, I don't want to say bad or good. It's just feels unfinished. It feels like it's just leaving me with no determined, I don't know, even processing it, like saying that out loud, like maybe that is a good thing. Maybe it's good that the film leaves me with these uncomfortable feelings at the end. I don't know, talking it out to myself right here in this car to the phone, I don't know. I think I have to sit on it longer, but just talking it out to myself, maybe I do really like the film and what it's trying to do. But I don't know. Then I keep going back to like the treatment of the woman of color and the treatment of the mother, and I'm like, I know that they're not trying to say bad things, but this is stuff that happens, and this film kind of uses it to further its narrative but doesn't say anything about it, and it should be saying that these things are bad. I don't know. I don't have any answers. I probably will have more concrete thoughts on it as I sit with this over the next few days. And I'm sure that this conversation that I'm having right now is going to incite a lot of stuff in the comments. But I am curious to hear... Ooh, my car lights just turned off. I am curious to hear what you guys all have to say. So comment below, and I'd love to hear more about the discourse. And hopefully I didn't kill my car's battery. Talk to you guys later. Bye.